recent events prove that our democracy needs attention.
Now more than ever, we need to talk with each other
and have more dialogue across our differences
to bridge toward real solutions.
After 40 years of serving our community, Seattle CityClub is the perfect place to get involved.
Get informed on issues.
And engage in your community.
You can help strengthen our region and our democracy.
Join us at seattlecityclub.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Engage, Seattle City Club's annual civic engagement event and fundraiser. My name is Betsy Robertson, and I have the honor of serving as the board president of Seattle City Club. In my day job at the American Red Cross, and as an elected official for the city of Shoreline, I've seen firsthand the importance of a strong, engaged, and resilient community. For 40 years, Seattle City Club has been hard at work building the foundation of an engaged community by offering informative, nonpartisan, and relevant programming. This is without a doubt the cornerstone of our democracy, and our democracy needs us right now. To meet the moment, and in honor of our 40th anniversary, this year we've launched Dialogue Across Differences, an initiative to help heal polarization so that we can bridge to solutions. Perhaps now more than ever, we are being challenged to overcome our preconceptions, hear each other, and collectively move forward. Today, just one example of the multidimensional offering Seattle City Club provides, we bring you a fascinating conversation about the role sports play in our democracy. Every year, we provide accessible ways to engage in civics, like this virtual luncheon today. Thank you to our generous donors, and for the rest of you, I hope you will join me right now and make a financial contribution to support this work. If you do, your gift will be matched. We can't do it without you. And now, I'd like to turn it over to marketing and media expert, community organizer, sports journalist, and moderator of today's discussion, Omari Salisbury.
It looks like that's me. Hey, thank you, Betsy. Appreciate it, man. This is really good to be here, everybody. We're going to jump right into it. I want to thank the City Club for this invitation to moderate this great panel right here. We're in it. It's more than a game, the role sports play in our democracy. And like I said, I'm excited to have this opportunity to be here right now, talking to everybody. And we are absolutely good to go. So let's jump right into it as I introduce our guest. Now, you know, back at Garfield High School and even in college, when I wasn't playing sports, I was an announcer. I did announcer and I did play-by-play. So here we go on the play-by-play. First up here, representing your Seattle Seahawks, the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Karen Wilkins-Mickey. Hey! So far, so good, huh?
Thanks, Omari.
All right. Representing your Seattle Sounders, Maya Mendoza-Exstrom, the Senior Vice President of Legal and External Affairs. We've got Maya. Maya's coming. Oh,
hi.
Thanks, Maya. Hey, Maya, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Hi, Karen. Hi, Maya.
All right. Last but not least, but definitely the new kids on the block, representing the Seattle Kraken, the Vice President of Community Engagement, Omari, Horita.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, look at this. It's the power team right here. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, they told me there's going to be some big time executives in this discussion, and City Club has delivered. We got some big time executives here. How is everybody today?
Excellent.
Hey.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday.
You know, we're gonna cover a few topics here today, but I think that one of the best ways to start is to kind of throw it out here, and I'm gonna throw this question to everybody, and we'll start in the order of introduction. So we'll start with you, Karen. Really, let me just throw it out there to you. What role does sports play in our democracy?
Well, I think that it plays a huge role. I mean, we have the opportunity, we have the platform, we have the privilege and the advantage to really amplify what's important. People are listening to us, people are hearing us, and we have to do that for our organizations, for our country. And I think that we have that responsibility and obligation. So, I mean, it's not about if we should, it's about we will.
Yeah, I think echoing that, Karen, I think, you know, the fascinating thing about the last 2 years has been, I think, a realization that sport sometimes is that convener of diverse opinions. We all root for the same team, and there are a lot of folks who maybe have different experiences in their personal life, different values, come from different backgrounds, but they wear the crest for you and repping the city. And I think, you know, one of the things I was talking to a former college teammate of mine, and we were talking about how many of our teammates we stay in touch with. And the reality of life is being on a team and being in sports doesn't necessarily mean you all get along all the time, but you're all on the team at the same time, trying to achieve a common goal. And there is a dimension of that I think we've lost. And I always like to try to borrow from the field of play because we're in sports, you know, and so how do you bring diverse people together towards a common goal? Well, sports is one of those places naturally that it happens. It's what we teach our kids about how you navigate conflict. You navigate it through a common understanding of where you're trying to get to collectively. And I think that's something that we missed in the last couple of years as fans, and certainly within sort of the ways in which we dialogue with each other.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I think you're right, Maya, that the coming together of different perspectives, different backgrounds, different political positions, different everything, but you find common ground either as a participant or as an observer. And it is that common ground that we need, as everyone has mentioned, to restore some of that civility and social cohesion that we seem to have lost of late. So it's powerful because of that. And then Karen, as you said, because we have this, I mean, everyone should be doing that, but we have this unusual platform. And venue to do that. And then on top of that, you know, we are all from different teams. In theory, we're all competing for fans. But what I love is I think we're much more powerful for it when we come together on this, because this is bigger than all of us. This is, you know, this is affecting the whole community and all of society. And so I think that's an obligation for us as well to work well together on that.
Right. And I'll start this next question here with Maya, and then we'll go to Omari, and then Karen. How has, and I know, Karen, you're kind of newer to the Seahawks, so you can tell us as much as you know there. But how did the events of the last 1 year impact your organization and impact, say, the intentionality of your organization and how it's communicating here to the general public? And I know that, you know, as somebody who's I'm on social media, I know that sometimes your organizations have made bold statements and you've gotten a lot of pushback, and some of it has been not so nice, especially on Twitter and things like that. But how has the events of the last 12 months really, or 12 months plus, really impacted your organization and how you're communicating, especially around issues of diversity? And we'll start with you, Maya.
Thanks. It's a really good question, Omari, and I think it's one of the interesting. I want to hear Omari's answer, and I want to hear Karen's answer to this, because I think we're all in a little different state of evolution. For us, we started an evolution, Sounders FC, maybe I would say 9 years ago, of thinking differently about sort of community engagement versus sort of an exercise of output versus impact, right? And so, like, we can be everything to everyone, or we can be really impactful in some ways. And what does it mean when you're talking about impact versus output? And you can show up, we can show up and pop a tent up lots of different places and be present and those sorts, but is that really moving the needle? And so the conversation started slowly and has been going over time, and the last year accelerated that work for us. And you know, I remember the day after sort of everything went down last summer, and I was talking to another colleague in our office, and I just said, I think we just need to listen to our employees. We need to stop and listen and thank our ownership group and Adrian Hanauer and Peter Tomaszauer, our president. They were like, okay, well, what do we do? And so we set up a 4-hour, it ended up being about 4 hours listening session for everyone in our entire organization to just share what they were feeling. And there was a lot of tears and there was a lot of pain. And I think what came out of that was the understanding of the immense intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, impatience, and value that we were not providing to our employees to help use their opportunity inside of Sounders FC to drive change forward. And so that 4 hours then turned into another series of about 10 to 12 hours over the course of the summer last summer, where we sat with about 40 members of our staff from all levels, from the technical side, from the business office, and looked at everything we had been doing in a community space and said, what should it be next? And that group of people inside of our organization developed our social justice framework that we published last August. And that was the opportunity for us as an organization to say, these are the things we want to be held accountable for 365 days of the year. These are the things that are not going to make everybody happy all of the time, because we can't be all things to all people. But these are our values. This is where we're headed. These are the ways we'd like to behave consistently going forward. This is how we will account for ourselves, and we want to be held accountable. And we're not going to measure up all of the time, and that also has to be okay. But it really was an employee-led process. And just by taking a moment to listen and to grieve collectively and to have that conversation and be pushed internally, we accelerated much further along on our evolution than I think we would have without it. And I'm just really thankful that our leadership from the very top, our ownership, gave us the space as an organization to have that moment internally, and to give our employees the chance to be part of that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think ours was the same. I think it was about listening and hearing. I mean, I wasn't here last year, but I saw it. I saw visibly as an external person looking in all of the great things that we were doing. We were very visible with what we believed in. And I think that's the thing. You have to be on the right side, and you have to stay firm with what you know to be true and not back down and say, this is right. Like, this is what we need to do. And we also, stopped and we listened to our employees. And in my role coming in, it was all about like inside out, like really understanding, like amplifying our marginalized employees and talking to them and finding out like, hey, what is it that's important for you, so that we can unify with players, like what's important to the players, and unify in that message so we can go out and really amplify those things and then leverage our platform, because we have that opportunity, which is what I started when we first started talking about our collective advantage. But we definitely have that opportunity. And I think that it did start us on that track of like what it is that we want to do around social justice, and even us coming together as the sports teams in Seattle to make a difference. So I think we were very visible in what we've done, even though I started after, the fact. I think that I'm really proud of that. Even me coming in, that was part of it. I mean, we were going to bring in someone of my position before, but it did accelerate it. Absolutely. And so I'm really thankful for that opportunity.
I'm mute.
I was like, they wouldn't let me unmute. I'm trying to speak. Yeah, thanks. So Maya pointed out, we're all at different stages in this evolution. I mean, we're about to have our first game, and we just got players. So we entered the market at a very different time. And I love the time that we entered the market, because as any business, you can't enter the market now and not be thinking about things differently. And so, and Omari, I know you've talked to a couple of my colleagues, but one of the founding principles was to create a new normal for representation in sport. And so we started our team by, thinking, okay, we need to, DEI is a holistic thing. It's internal and external, but you have to start yourselves. And so right now, our staff, I think, is 25% BIPOC, 43% women. It's the most diverse staff in the NHL. It's probably one of the most diverse staffs in all of professional sports. And it makes a difference, because it's not like you have one or two people of color. It's a strong voice, and it's a supportive voice. So getting back to your original question of how has the last year changed us, it hasn't changed our direction at all, because I think it's these are the conversations, not certainly to that degree that we've been having, but we were founded on an awareness that we need to be different. We were founded on the awareness that there have been many voices excluded from the sport, from sports in general, from opportunities, and we have this opportunity and an obligation to change that. So as Maya said, it certainly accelerated it and it created some space for some conversations that, you know, a lot of us have been aware of for a long time, but many people have not. And so those back and forth dialogues are very painful, but an amazing growth opportunity was very powerful for our organization.
Right. And Mari, I'll keep this next question. I'll start it there with you. And it really has to do with like the commitment around the outreach, so to speak, or engagement or inclusion for these three teams right here. One thing that got my attention with the Kraken, and you know, it was outside of the name and all the variation of jokes around it that we do, but and that sharp logo, by the way, which is really dope. You know, I was like, whoa, was that again, it was like, okay, well, man, here they are talking about Soul on Ice. I never knew about that, you know, the documentary about black hockey players and everything else until the Kraken made awareness around it. And you got, you know, young black girls wanting to play hockey and you know, engagement as much as you could previously, like through COVID and everything else. And so that did get my attention. This black guy from the CD. I used to go to T-Bird games when I was young. That was something to do, you know what I'm saying? But I hadn't really been in hockey at all. But I saw that your approach in it was like, okay, well, man, how can we communicate or engage with black people? I'm sure other people too, but you know, in the black community. And it cut through. My question to you and to all three of you, and we can start with you and then go to Karen, and then go to Maya, is how much of that is your commitment, though, and how much of it is like, because you know, I'm a marketer. Somebody came to me, was like, yeah, we want to do something. I'd be like, okay, you should do this for some black folks, pull them in, X, Y, and Z, everything else. And how much of that is like, this is our commitment. We really want to pull in this community. We want these people to be engaged in part and parcel of our games and part and parcel of being fans.
Yeah, thank you. And great question, because I think you started off when Maya was talking about the difference between output and impact. And you know, a lot of sports community engagement, which is a very loosely thrown around term, is marketing driven, and ours really is not. Ours is much more focused on the social impact piece. So when I got here in January 2019 and talked to Todd, and you know, we had 7 people here, and one of his priorities is we really have to include and engage this whole community. And so, you know, I need to help figure out how to do that. I'm not a marketer. I come from the social impact and the legal background. And so we did some outreach to some different communities. And it was March of 2020. We brought the Black Hockey History Truck, which is a co-production between the NHL and a history organization. You know, we paid for it to come out to Seattle for 4 days. We didn't have a team. We didn't have anything. We didn't have an arena to put it out, which most people did. So we started a dam to Seattle Center to a Northgate Elementary. And there's one other place that we brought it to, but down in Highland. And we started at NAM, and we've had a luncheon for about 30 Black leaders to come and talk about hockey. And we Kwame Mason, who's the author of Soul on Ice, the producer of Soul on Ice, flew out here. And I remember this because it was like March 4th of 2020. It was like on the very last truck stop, and then they cut the truck off. And we were saying, this is commitment. These people flew into Seattle from New York, because at the time, you know, COVID started here, and everyone's like, oh my God, Seattle. But it was one of the last public gatherings we were allowed to have at NAM. And Kwame spoke, some of our employees spoke, and he shared the history of the Black population in hockey, which is so unknown. And we gave out these little postcards framed to all the attendees that showed the Black Hockey League. And yesterday, full circle, we had our first Wonder Foundation board meeting. The chair of my board is Richard Jones, who you may know, a Black federal judge. And so we were talking about going around the circle, asking our board members why they were there, why they chose to spend time with our foundation. And he pulled out that postcard frame. He said, I didn't even know Black people played hockey. I'd never seen a Black person playing hockey until I showed up at that event you guys held last year. He gave these out, and now he's paying attention to it. But it kind of opened his whole mind for him, and he said, we should be able to do this. There should be greater representation, and since that is our focus, that's our focus as a foundation. He is excited to join on. So long way of answering the question. It's not about marketing. I mean, marketing then comes into it to support it because, the more you get it out, but it's driven by trying to make an impact and trying to make a change of who the game is for. And because we're new, we have the rare opportunity of building a new hockey culture that really, really reflects everybody.
I'll jump in, Omari. I'll echo that. I think, I didn't know those things too, Mari. And I think, it's been so fun to watch the evolution of the Kraken, how you've chosen to introduce yourself to market in that way. An assumption that if you're white and you like hockey already, we got you, which is an okay thing, but it's novel. And I think, we have a very different sort of assumption. Oh, MLS is not doing enough for the Latino market. Everybody who's Latino loves soccer and we're not doing enough. And we stop there. We just stop there. We like that, and it's a marketing exercise. And, it's an interesting thing when you start to sort of unpack some of the ways in which we've approached solutioning towards, well, what is that we're trying to do here, right? And it's to make soccer we don't need to make you a soccer fan. We need to make you a fan of Sounders FC. Well, how do you do that? And we talk about impact. It's about showing up, and it's about showing up 365 days of the year in consistent ways that generates genuine love and value for the brand. And it's not about a one-time transaction ticket sale, it's about an intergenerational impact. And what does that really mean? And it means, I think one of the things it's meant for us is we've had to develop a more sophisticated way to have a conversation when we show up, right? And so if you walk into a community room in the CD or in the international district, you have to listen and you have to understand and you have to be willing to say, how can soccer help you, right? Small business owner, achieve the results that you want? How can soccer help you, community organizer, achieve the results that you're looking to drive in your community? Because you live here, you work here, you play here every day. And I think that's been something that's been a change as well in the last 5 or 6 years, but it's certainly something that's been wonderful. And Karen alluded to this, sort of like the power of all of us coming together. I think all of us are in that place. What makes Seattle so cool and so different is that we're all values led that way now. And so the expectation is that when you get one of us, sometimes you might get all of us.
That's right.
We all call each other and say, I was talking, we were down and we were at home site and we were talking to them about what they're doing for, how they're thinking about housing and development. And we're having those conversations in sports. Not just like, hey, are you guys going to pop a 10 up at that 5K that's at Green Lake next week? And that's been the evolution of the conversation internally for us. We've had to have a more sophisticated appreciation, understanding, be more informed about issues that are affecting not only communities in geographic locations in our region, communities as we think about communities of color. And the conversations that Mari and Karen and I have are about health outcomes for kids and the intersectionality of environmental factors and health, and how can play help that? And that's, the secret sauce of sort of what I think we're doing differently. And, that's real.
Yeah.
That's the work, and if soccer can make that sticky, if the Sounders brand can make that sexy for somebody else, man, then we've done our job right. And then, oh, by the way, I hope you're a fan. And, I hope you come to a game sometime. And I hope that we can make it accessible for you to do so. But that's the impact.
Yeah. When Mari, you talked about who's going to play hockey, right? Like, how do you get Black and brown communities interested in hockey? I love that the Kraken came in strong and going to the youth and allowing the arena to be open for all and getting youth involved in it, just like with football. So we have women's flag football. Like, how cool is that? You know, I mean, just going after things more intentionally and doing things differently. Our, you know, we haven't talked about our collective advantage and some of the things that we have done, but even, you know, our WIAA and going into the schools with gender equality, like showing that, look, you know, football can be for all people and being representative of that and showing that brand in a very strong and intentional and purposeful way. And I think the Seahawks have done a great job at that. And I think our community team is just so out there everywhere. We have 12s everywhere. And I think our community team has just done a fantastic job at representing well in every pocket of Washington State and beyond.
Can I just add, Omari, I'm sorry, but you asked, you know, the marketing versus are you really serious? We also, you know, have some pretty notable firsts. I mean, we hired Everett Fitzhugh, the first ever NHL play-by-play Black announcer. And we hired JT Brown, the first ever Black color analyst. I mean, the league's been around for a while, and yet no one else has done this. So we really need it, and I think we're trying to back it up in a number of different ways.
Right. And I would say this, and Karen, this might be a question here specifically for you, because I know you work in the internal operations there at the Seahawks. A few weeks ago, I was there, maybe it's like 2 months now, the Youth Achievement Center, which is down there in South Seattle. They're trying to put together a creative justice, community passageways, King County Council member Gurmai Zahalai. And I was out there to boost signal boost because they were trying to raise money for that. And, you know, the Seahawks had a very visible appearance there. We saw a blitz, and it turns out the blitz can do the electric slide better than Councilmember Zahalai. Go figure. And the cheerleaders, and they donated, I think it was like $30,000 or something like that. It was very visible. But then as the night came to a close, which was not broadcast, not talked about, it didn't really come out until days later, is that Bobby Wagner actually ended up making a donation. I believe they put it over the top. And how important is somebody like you internally in these conversations internally, especially, I'll just say this in perspective, somebody who's from Seattle, you know, for Black athletes here as a kid, you know, when the Central District, we had a Black community, it was like 80% Black, you know, if not more. And now, you know, it's very spread out. Because of that, it's very difficult to keep your, you know, hands on things and everything else. One, maybe you can give some insight into the challenges that you face there in this city and its changing demographics in the Seahawks team, where you got a lot of, especially Black players there on that team in this city that is getting less and less Black. But then also the role that you might play there as well is when you're talking about engagement with players in community.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's so cool about the Youth Achievement Center and even that with Bobby? Like, I love that what we're doing is we're focusing on the Youth Achievement Center with leveraging the platform of the Seahawks. And I love that our players step up in such a strong way and in such a silent way. Like, it's not about, when you talk about marketing, like, it's not about like, look what Bobby did. He, you know, that's what Bobby did, but it wasn't about the Seahawks. It wasn't about, it's this, because it's keeping it focused on what's important, which is the Youth Achievement Center and providing housing for homeless youth. Like, that is phenomenal what they're doing. And then how we can leverage our platform to do that and, you know, and promote them is what the goal is, right? And so I would say internally, what is the challenge? Well, you know, it's kind of funny because it's such an opportunity, right? And I don't look at it as a hard thing. Because what I'm doing is so right. And it's bringing that visibility and bringing those opportunities of what we can do even better than we've done it before. And really tying our message of what do the players really believe in so that we can support that too and be unified in our messaging, right? So that it's not like this player does this and this player does that. It's like, look, we want to know, we have a players fund for that purpose so that we can support the things that are important to the players, but also go deep and drive those strong relationships like with the Youth Achievement Center, like with the Black Futures Co-op Fund, like the Players Equality and Justice, like, trying to make sure that we're just being really intentional, like InvestEd with creating digital equipment for our youth who did not have access, like being part of that. There's so many great things we can be part of, and we're everywhere, but how do we focus in and be really intentional? So I would say that my work has just kind of given us some focus. And what I continue to do is make sure that we're really aligning in economic stability. How are we affecting homelessness? How are we affecting health, access to healthcare? What are we doing around education and making sure that we're helping our youth? It's not always about, it's kind of weird, it's about football, right? But there's so much behind the game, and there's so much that happens, and there's so much that our players are interested in. And you talk about the representation. Yes, 75+% are Black or brown players. And then representative of our staff, we are growing our representation for sure. And that's really important. But more importantly is, what do our employees want? What do our players want? How do we unify? And how do we focus on creating an inclusive culture internally? How do we want to be viewed externally as well as internally with our community? So hopefully I answered that. I know there was a lot there, but hopefully that answered your question.
It really did. And I want to share this with all three of you guys, right? Is that people who follow me and follow Converge know that I'm just one of the biggest Mariners fans that you'll ever bump into, right? And I'll just say this: it's not X's and O's. They kind of break our heart every year. We still keep our fingers crossed. But the reason why I'm a just diehard Mariners fan is I was maybe 10 years old, and Alvin Davis came up to the Central District, the CAY, and Alvin Davis would come in and give us tickets to go down there to the Kingdom. And as a 10-year-old kid, I grew up right on Jackson Street, and you could walk all the way down Jackson, go to the Kingdom. People don't realize that was big. King County Stadium was massive. Man, the seats were somewhere, maybe 300 level, but we were there. And you see Gaylord Perry and all these people there in the Kingdom. But it was the fact that Alvin Davis was intentional and came to our neighborhood and would give us tickets to the Mariners game. To me, the Mariners can do no wrong, and you got to imagine that this decades later, commitment is still with the Mariners. Of course, I go to the ballpark. I want to see them win every time, but it's about the experience and it's about the connection with this team. And so I do know that being in, and this was back when Alvin was doing that, it wasn't about, nobody had titles, DEI or this or that or whatever. He was just like, man, we need to get our kids in the ballpark. And here it is all these years later. I'm a lifelong Mariners fan and supporter. So these efforts that you guys make to want to engage people and engage young people and everything else, you just never know how that turns out, and my kids now, they're big Mariners fans. It's generational. That one gift from Alvin Davis is a gift that just kept on giving, for the Seattle Mariners. I wanted to switch it up here, and then we have some questions that are going to come in from the audience. And I wanted to start this one with you, Maya, because you have a very international organization there that, like, historically, when we look at sports, and I kind of look it through the lens of my community. But when we look at sports here, is that whenever athletes, especially Black athletes, but whenever athletes are put up in an international realm, then America gets behind them because it's America against the world. We see that with the scripture here. Jesse Owens is a perfect example. He came back home, died broke. You know what I'm saying? But at the time, it's like you're taking on Hitler's, Superman and all these kind of things. And we find these examples in sport when the stand-up is against another country, then America's with you. But when you stand up for democracy at home, America oftentimes is against you. We find that in contemporary times here. We look back in Colin Kaepernick, but you go back to the 1968 Olympics with Tommy Smith and Juan Carlos, we're holding up the black fist with the glove there. What are some of the dynamics do you think that play into that in sports in America, where, if, especially when it's against an international opponent, everybody's with you. But if you speak up as an athlete at home, a lot of times you get a lot of heat. Now, clearly, George Floyd has changed the way that organizations and even people look at that. But what are your thoughts around that? And we'll go with you, and then Omari, and then Karen.
There's so much in that question, Omari, to unpack. I think you're right. My sport in particular that I'm representing here today is inherently international. It's played in every corner of the world. Our professional league is not even the most watched professional league in my sport. There are interdimensions of race and culture when you start talking about Black men who come from Colombia, who are on my team, who are not American, on our team, sorry, but on the team that I represent here today, Black men from Caribbean islands, right? Caribbean nations who speak French or speak Spanish as their native language. I can tell you that in our locker room last year, there was a lot of conversation and there was a lot of sort of cohesion around when the Black Players Collective in our league formed last summer, which was a group of current and former Black players who came together and brought the MLS Players Association and brought the MLS to heel to say, no, we're going to make change together in our league. Racism is rampant in our sport internationally. We see this in England a lot. Black American players that have gone abroad to play who are subjected to consistent racist abuse online. Black British players go to play in Italy, and the Brazilian players who go to play in Italy, and the ape chants are still very prevalent. You've seen UEFA cracking down and emptying stadiums, requiring teams to play with no fans, which is a massive revenue hit for those teams. And so it's a big international challenge for us. I think locally, it's interesting to, I think this was Sue Bird last summer was talking through these things. Like, I am a woman, I am gay, right? And I play in a male dominated sport. Everything about my worldview essentially is political. Like, you don't want me to talk about politics. Well, you politicize every aspect of my life externally, right? And so it's about taking the microphone back. And I think, that those are the people in our own market that are leading in some of these conversations, sort of break through that sort of just stopping at, well, this is about racism, or this is about, and I love that she is pushing us in the male sports to have the same kind of voice. And when I say our locker room was a little bit in sort of in close conversation last summer, one of the things we talked about a lot in the business office was, as Karen said, how do we let the team know that we have their backs, that they can take the same bold steps that players in the women's game like Sue Bird were taking and WNBA were taking. And the day that the boycott happened, the bubble stopped, right? The WNBA bubble stopped, and our team was down where were we? We were in LA, and were we in LA? I can't even remember. We might have been somewhere. I think we were in LA. And we knew that this was happening, and we were having this conversation, and we were like, we've got to let Coach Schmetzer know that when the players wake up from their afternoon rest, because they were rest respite before the match, that if they decide they don't want to play, that the front office has their back. The front office is okay with that. The front office will not, we'll call front office to front office, which we were doing in the background. And it was one of those moments where we realized that we didn't have the internal sort of structures in place to be that club that gives the players that much support in that moment. And I think that's something that has made us better. And so when we look at individual players, we look at other sports that have had to play a more politicized role in just how they are presented in the world. I think sometimes the reflection for us on the men's side of the game has been, how do we support our players in that moment, and our recognition that we have to provide that support. We have to. Now, they're not going to boycott and walk off the field every time, but when that conviction is so united and so strong, that we have to be aligned in the front office to support that, and to be clear with the league and communicate transparently with the league, with our opponent in that situation, and to make sure that they know we have their backs. And that was really the first time that we had been presented with that, and that was last summer. And I think, as we have had a more sophisticated conversation about racism in our own organization, it has become easier to be supportive and aligned on those things, and to make sure that our players feel that way. And we're not perfect yet, but we also have this complexity of having, we do not have a Black American on our first team roster right now, and that is a different complexity for our locker room. That doesn't change. It just adds layers of intersectional sort of conversation to that dialogue, and so it's really important to be aligned.
All right. Any other takers on this one? There we go.
Maya, basically summed it up, but for our team, we're so visible. Our players with our "We Want Justice," shirts, with the cause for cleats, with the helmets and the names on the helmets. We are so visible. And I just think, if we support our players, we also have an amazing coach and a coach that's passionate and compassionate, that has empathy, and that stopped practice to talk about, the feelings of the players. That's really important. Those are the things people don't see, but able to have a press conference about it, how important it is, and to just not ignore it, but to say, yeah, this is happening and it's real, and we need to pay attention to it and do what's right. That's what I'm saying. We want justice. Who's going to say we don't? Who doesn't want justice? And so the way I see it, the more that we amplify the messaging that's important for the players, but then, like Maya said, supporting the players too and what they want to do, I think that's really important. But having a coach that also is supportive is key, and we're so fortunate. And then the league, with their Inspire Change initiative, and us just supporting that, in addition, doing a double click to inspire change, and then also advancing racial equity and creating those commitments and having actions around those commitments is really key too, and making them very visible. So
yeah, hockey's a different sport altogether, as we alluded to. I think there's 44 active players of color in the league of 32 teams. So it has not shown up in the same way that it has in other sports from a player's perspective. I think last summer, Matt Dumba took a knee, was the first player to take a knee. He's half Filipino, actually, so he's biracial. And then a couple of people stood around him, but and that was in the hockey world. It's like, oh my gosh, this is happening. So we have some, catching up to do on the team side. And there's reasons that hockey is as wide as it is. It comes from really cold places. It's not as prevalent like soccer would be all over the world. And so the league has certainly been working with the Brookings Institute to look at demographic studies and the business perspective. It's like this needs to shift clearly over time. And last year they came out with their first anti-racist whole set of initiatives, really after the culmination of about 3 years of saying, all right, let's own up to this, let's talk about it, and let's put some steps in place. And so, it's totally a work in progress, because it's just coming from a different place. But I think, again, coming with us, I don't have stories to share because our players just got here, and it's a different demographic of players. So it will be interesting to see how that moves forward, because our team as an organization definitely stands for, I think, some pretty clear things. And we want to support our players, absolutely. I just don't know what their primary points of interest are.
All right. So I guess we're going to go into maybe a small lightning round here, as we have some questions that have come in from our audience here. And we'll start this one with you, Karen, and then we'll go to Omari, and then we'll go to Maya. And it says, and some of this you've touched on, but we'll elaborate here because it's a question from the audience. What is the difference between your approach to changing your team culture internally versus changing the culture with your fans?
Ooh, wow, that's a tough one because you can only do so much with your fans, right? I mean, we can work on our culture internally and drive like different initiatives, but your fans are going to be your fans. Here's the one thing I will say though, as a culture that believes in social justice, racial equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and taking a stand on those things, you're going to have fans that are for you and you're going to have fans that are against you. Right? I mean, you just are. And I always say that we're not trying to change your beliefs, but we do try to shift your behavior. Right? It's not about your beliefs are your beliefs, but your behavior and respect for all is something that I work to really focus on. So it is difficult when you have a fan base that, people love football, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to believe in what you believe in. So if all our players come out in their "We Want Justice" shirts, you may have fans that say, "Oh, here we go again." That could happen, but I can't control that, right? But I can control how you will behave in our home, how you will be represented when you are in our stadium. And I think that's where we do have a little bit of controls. And, not by going around and saying, but you're going to respect what we put out there, right? If you're in our home, you're going to respect our home, right? And I think that's what's really important. So it's a hard one to answer in terms of changing our fans, but I can let our fans know who we are and what we believe in, and then amplify that message and not be afraid of it. That's so important. Not be afraid of what you believe in and what you stand for, because it's right. It's right. And then fans will be with you or not. And we can't control that. Any of our sports teams, none of us can, right? And I think that we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the way that we show up on the different social media platforms is putting it out there what we all believe in. And I said, you're going to gain some fans and you're going to lose some fans. And so you do have, by doing that, by being pretty open about what we believe in, the people who really have a problem with that will self-select out. And when we're working, because everything's new, we're working on our code of conduct. We talked about costumes and behavior and all these different things. So to that extent, I think you can control a little bit. You can't control what someone feels in their heart, but you can control how they behave when they're in your house.
I think that there are three things sort of hold true internally and externally. It's consistency, it's accountability, and it's authenticity. And those are the three things I think that should control our internal values and our external values. I don't think we're there all the time, but I think internally, one of the things we've really tried to do, and Karen, you mentioned this, our values are important, but we are all colleagues of each other. And so our behaviors are what we have to work on all the time. And it's not any different than the team, right? The best state of all functioning teams is that you can live in a world where you are respectful of each other. You can clearly communicate in truthful ways without disrespect. And I think that's a cultural sort of evolution of teams generally. It's one that we have to continue to work on as an organization. I think the best things that have happened in COVID is we've all been humanized a little bit more. The worst things that have happened in COVID is we are separated from each other. We all work in sports because we're inherently social, and we're remote right now. We don't see each other except on match day, and even so distanced and masked. And it's this bizarre set of rituals for our industry. I love sports because I hang out with 20-year-olds, and this time of year when we're getting ready for playoffs, the buzz in the office is usually amazing, and we don't have that. And so how do we create a dynamic where we can have those informal conversations, create those relationships, build that trust in a COVID context? I think that's been an innate challenge of the last year. And it's one that has actually forced us to evaluate our cultural norms and our behaviors more discreetly. When I say sort of accountability, authenticity, and consistency, that means that you're doing it 365. I keep saying this, but that is a value that we add that to sort of those things, those behaviors and those values. You have to show up. You have to be that vision, that version of your values and the place you want to be 365 days of the year. And you have to be okay when you're not. And part of that is calling out yourself. I think, as you know, we're all senior leaders in our organization and we're all fallible. We all make mistakes every day. I've probably made 7 today. I'm sure I have, but I think part of it is also showing that, demonstrating what that accountability looks like. And that, especially when we start talking about some of these harder conversations, about like, look, I walk through the world, as a Filipino white American woman, and I have a lot of privilege that I know I have. And being really honest about that and my privilege sitting in the seat of power that I sit in is really important. And sometimes it's really hard to call someone who's senior out on that privilege. And so making it a safe space for someone who's junior to me in the organization, who has a different lived experience, to call me out when my privilege is showing is something that, is a hard thing to do, but it's something that we all have to keep getting better at. And it's really hard in Zoom land. I think Karen said something earlier to sort of this effect of like, just the ability to walk, like maybe it wasn't this conversation, but the ability to walk in Chuck's office, like, right, Chuck Arnold, president of Seahawks, white male, and have a conversation with him. Like, other people see that too. And so it comes from a shared sort of values-based, I understand that we are all evolving from the top. And I do think, whether it's Todd for Omari, certainly in our world, inside of Sounders FC, but certainly for Karen, having that capacity, like to have a leader and an ownership group that's very carefully caring about these issues and wanting us to talk about these issues and daylight these issues, is part of that cultural change and that consistency.
Stuff. I think we got time here for another question or two. And by the way, for as far as the Seahawks go, right? It was like, this is my first year actually watching football again. Like, I was so put off by Kaepernick and how, like, the NFL's response, and really America's response to Kaepernick, and the president of the United States at the time, and called people all kinds of things and talked about their mamas and everything else, and I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good on the NFL. You know what I'm saying? Watch a game, support nothing. People want to give me Seahawks tickets. Nah, I'm all right. And it wasn't even our specific team, the Seahawks. Well, they've always been out in front on stuff. But as a fan, I was like, nah, I don't want nothing to do with the NFL. And so you're right. You can't, either way, you can't control the fans. You know what I'm saying? Something happens. Even though Seahawks ain't do nothing wrong, but I still shut the Seahawks out, for almost 5 years, right?
Yeah, Omari, I actually had friends that said the same thing as you. That were like, I'm never watching again. Like, I remember that time, and I remember people saying they weren't. It took a long time for people to trust and come back as a fan. That was a really good example.
Yep. All right, we'll start this one with you, Mari. This is from Peggy. And we'll go Mari, and then we'll go Karen, and then Maya. From Peggy, do you have recommendations for young people wanting to get involved in the DEI work of sports organizations? What are some concrete steps they can take?
That's a great question. To be honest, I don't think I'm kind of thinking about this. A lot of our DE&I work focuses on young people, and as far as trying to include them into the program that we do, or bring them to the arena and getting into conversations. But I guess it depends on what that question means. If it means that, then it means have them call me. If it means like from a internship type of perspective, I don't think we've built anything like that out yet. But I would say, honestly, for the Kraken, if there's someone, a young person out there who wants to know more about what we're doing, then have them call me.
I think having this role, when I started in DEI, like it wasn't a thing, right? It was like diversity recruiting or something. And there wasn't a college degree. I mean, my degree is in communications. And so everything I've learned is through practice, passion and practice. So if you have a passion in diversity, equity, inclusion, it starts there. Then if you're in school, take courses like sociology, psychology. If you have a human resource management class that you could take. I started in HR. I now work directly for Chuck Arnold, the president, but I've had an HR track and a staffing track, but I always focused on diversifying an organization. I always looked for underrepresented minorities and finding opportunities for them. And I always looked for the opportunities in an organization to diversify in any way I could. And so it just kind of happened for me. But nowadays there's courses to take, there's certification programs. You can do an internship in HR. You can start there and work your way into like a community role. You could reach out to people like us, connect with us on LinkedIn and we can help have other conversations with you. But there are programs. And if you want to be in the sports industry, you take sports management. And then a lot of people don't realize that now diversity and inclusion has become big in sports. So people actually are looking for people to do what I do now within sports. So I think that would be great. And then yes, Seattle U and what we're doing to help diversify their MBA program and provide fellowships. Like we're doing that right now here in Seattle and supporting Seattle University for MBA. If you're a student that wants to go and further your education, Seattle U is something that we're doing intentionally to drive diversity within the sports industry.
Mari and Karen both said it. The sports industry, like every industry, is not going backwards on this stuff. And I think what if you missed it in their comments, what they're both saying is that the principles we're talking about should permeate every aspect of our business. Like they're becoming part of our brands and our brand values that are out there in the world. So when you buy a ticket to the Seahawks, you are doing this work. When you buy a ticket to the Kraken, you're doing this work. That's where we want to get to, right? When you come and show up for Sounders FC, you are contributing to our collective impact in the world. And so that means that if you want to get involved in this, it ain't a department. It ain't a community engagement department anymore. This is part of our brand. So if you are a seller and you love ticket selling and you can speak to these issues and do this work, awesome. If I will tell you, we had a fantastic partnership that literally was put together over the holiday break, which is never how these things happen, with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians and Emerald Queen Casino. We made sure that it was the Puyallup Tribe of Indians that were our partner on our Hendricks community kit this year. And we made sure that that community kit gave money back from sales to align causes, both the Hendricks family and their foundation and our work with NAM and our Books and Balls program with NAM, but also to the Indian education organization that works inside with the Puyallup Tribe inside Tacoma Public Schools to advance their efforts. And it was such an intentional part of the partnership that partner is partnerships now, partnership marketers, when you talk to ubiquitous brands out there in the world, they're looking for aligned values-based investments. Climate Pledge Arena exists not because Amazon wanted Amazon on top of a freaking arena. It's because it's aligned around a common set of values. And so DEI, brand values, is exactly where this industry is going on all facets. And it's not just a community department that's shown up at the 5K anymore.
And well, let me say this, and we're at the top of the hour. I definitely want to say this to our viewing audience, is that for people that know me specifically and know Converge, is like, I wouldn't even waste time trying to moderate anything if it was organizations that didn't really have high values and qualities and standards. And I could probably tell you guys, I could go off for 30, 40 minutes on each one of your organizations of the stuff that you've been doing. I got recommendations though, and I'm gonna email people, you know what I'm saying? I know you guys would be happy to hear, but the thing is that, man, it's not smoke and mirrors. And a lot of times in Seattle, especially right now, we find reasons to down ourselves. Oh, Seattle's not doing this, we're not that, crime here, homeless there. We should also take a moment to applaud ourselves for like fantastic organizations like yours that are leaders, not only here in this city, but you guys set an example nationwide of what's possible and being innovative and then doing the right thing. I would tell, Mama always says there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And there's never a right time to do the wrong thing. And these three organizations right here have exemplified that. And I'm definitely, a hard-nosed critic when I need to be, but I'm also fair and I always tell the truth, you know what I'm saying? And the truth is that you guys are doing a great job. And I really look forward to all three organizations continuing to innovate in this space. And don't forget that story I was telling you about Alvin Davis, just that intentionality of just coming there to the Central District all those years ago and giving us tickets to watch the Mariners in the Kingdome. And you got a lifelong Mariners fan right here. Karen, Maya, Omari, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Omari.
Thanks, Omari.
Hey, send me those recommendations.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. They're coming at you. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And right now, I'm going to hand it back over to Betsy.
Thank you very much to our moderator and each of our panelists today. And now we want to share a short message about dialogue across differences from some of Seattle CityClub's young civic leaders.
I can't think of any other time that's been this challenging.
It seems like everything we know and all of our skills are being tested right now.
We're all in this together, but we remain so distant from one another.
My name is Michael Thomas.
My name is Jenny Castro.
My name is Charlie Fisher.
My name is Kellen Horde.
My name is Rahel Miriam.
I've been involved with City Club this year as a second-year intern through a fellowship working on research for the Washington State Debate Coalition.
Working directly with leadership at a nonprofit organization.
Building partnerships with community and media partners across the state.
Participating in civic bootcamp programs about housing and homelessness issues.
I've been involved with City Club providing ideas for future programs to get youth engaged.
City Club gives me the opportunity to hear different voices and perspectives.
Use my passion for civics while building my network and gaining new information.
Opportunities to make new connections.
To expand my learning and professional development.
City Club gives me opportunities to channel my passion for youth civic engagement through an organization already doing great work in the field of civic education.
I know we all have different ideas and values about things like public health,
public safety,
the economy,
and education.
But City Club was founded 40 years ago.
For all of us, no exceptions.
To participate in and learn from respectful civic dialogue across differences.
So we can find a way to come together.
To learn more about each other.
To start bridging towards real, lasting solutions.
For a brighter,
healthier,
more prosperous,
safer
future. Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Thank you to our youth civic leaders. If you haven't had a chance to make a gift to Seattle City Club, please consider doing so now at seattlecityclub.org. And don't forget, it will be matched, so your contribution has double the impact. And thank you to everyone who has given. Your support is the bedrock of a stronger democracy for us all. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at another Seattle City Club event soon.
Recent events prove that our democracy needs attention.
Now more than ever, we need to talk with each other
and have more dialogue across our differences
to bridge toward real solutions.
After 40 years of serving our community, Seattle City Club is the perfect place to get involved,
get informed on issues,
and engage in your community.
You can help strengthen our region and our democracy.
Join us at seattlecityclub.org.